Hi, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Tyler, and we're from the Econ Tutoring Center at ASU, and today we're going to be doing a video on hypothesis testing. Remember that our notation might be a little bit different than your professor's, so keep that in mind when you're working on your problems. So the first thing here is the null hypothesis. It's notated by H0, or some people call it H0. What this says is the status quo. So if it's kind of a weird example, but maybe you think about how many meals people on average eat per day. Your null hypothesis there would be 3, because you generally assume that people eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Then you would assume that the mean of the amount of meals that the population eats a day is 3.
So that's what's normally accepted, and so the alternative hypothesis, which is sometimes notated as H sub A or H sub 1, usually just called the alternative, or your research question, is what's different than the status quo. So usually this is an exact opposite of what your null hypothesis is. And in this one you're trying to determine what you think could be different, or what you want to test. So in this case this is your research question. So to take the example of how many meals per day, let's say we wanted to say that we think people eat more than 3 meals per day. Well, that would be, or less. So we just think that it's not 3. Then that would be our alternative hypothesis, because it's different than what we accept as the status quo.
So going from that example we just talked about, where we assume that the average of the meals per day is 3, our null hypothesis in that case would be that the mu, which stands for mean, of the meals eaten per day is 3. So now then our alternative hypothesis, what we're testing for, is that the average of that is not 3. Now notice that this isn't greater than or less than, it's not equal to. So when the null hypothesis says that something's equal, your alternative hypothesis is that it's not equal. It could be less than or greater than, because it's the exact opposite of the null hypothesis. So this is our first example where we say that the average is not 3. So now let's go to another example where we might say, okay, we think that, so it's assumed that the average is 3, but we think that people eat more than 3 meals a day. Maybe people eat 4 meals a day. So our null hypothesis there is that the mu, the average, the mean of meals eaten per day, is less than or equal to 3. So we have to have the equal in the null hypothesis at all times. And then what we're testing for in the alternative hypothesis is that the meals eaten per day is greater than 3. And notice that less than or equal to, the exact opposite of that, is greater than. So that's that would be our hypothesis if we were trying to test that the average meals eaten per day is greater than 3. So now let's just look at it the other way. Let's say that we think people eat less than 3 meals a day. You know, you're busy, you might skip breakfast. So our null hypothesis, mu, is greater than or equal to 3. So this says that we assume that people eat 3 or more meals per day, and we're trying to test whether people eat less than 3. So we're testing whether the mean of meals eaten per day is less than 3. Strictly less than, again, it's the exact opposite, and you always have to have the equal or equal to in the null hypothesis. So just remember, and to summarize, that when you're writing the null hypothesis, it has to have an equal to in it. Whether that could be a strict equal, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, it has to have an equal in it, because it's what we're assuming is true. So that implies that something equals something. And then in the alternative hypothesis, it can't have a strict equal or equal to in it. It does not equal, strictly greater than, or strictly less than, because we're trying to disprove what we think is true. So this was a general overview of hypothesis testing. I hope you understand it a little better. We have some videos where we go into actually formulating hypotheses from problems and then going through to test them. But we're going to do another overview video where we talk about what it means to reject a hypothesis, when we do that, and failing to reject it. So look for that.
We hope this helped, and if you have any more questions, feel free to visit us at the Econ Tutoring Center or comment below.